When family loyalty meets legal truth, the testimony that changed everything. The moment everything shifted, picture this. A federal courtroom falls silent as a woman takes the witness stand. She's not just any witness, she's the defendant's daughter. For the next 4 hours, she will deliver testimony that prosecutors call potentially decisive and that sends her father into what observers describe as a fury. This isn't fiction. This is what happened when Ivanka Trump testified in her father's federal election interference case, and the shockwaves are still reverberating through multiple ongoing prosecutions. If you want to understand what really happened beyond the headlines, you're in the right place. Hit that like button and subscribe, because we're diving deep into why this testimony matters so much. Why this is different from every other witness. Here's what you need to understand. Family members don't testify against defendants casually. When it happens, it's because legal compulsion overrides family loyalty, or because the witness decides that truth under oath matters more than protecting a relative. Think about the weight of that decision. Ivanka Trump fought this subpoena through multiple court challenges. She argued privilege, she claimed irrelevance, she exhausted every legal avenue to avoid this moment. And yet, there she was under oath, with perjury consequences hanging over every word. The credibility factor that changes everything. Markets teach us a critical lesson. When insiders with comprehensive knowledge provide information that damages their own interests, you should pay attention. The cost of sharing that information tells you something profound about its accuracy. The same principle applies in courtrooms. Juries understand that family members have every reason to protect their relatives. So, when a daughter testifies against her father, when she confirms facts he's denied, when she establishes elements prosecutors couldn't prove through other witnesses, that testimony carries extraordinary weight. Why? Because jurors know she wouldn't do it unless accuracy and legal obligation left her no choice. What she actually said and why it's devastating. Let's break down the 4 critical areas Ivanka's testimony addressed. 1. He knew the fraud claims were false. According to courtroom transcripts, Ivanka testified about conversations in the weeks after the 2020 election where her father explicitly acknowledged that his fraud claims lacked factual foundation. More damaging, she testified that he stated he was using those claims strategically to maintain political support and pressure officials certifying election results. This obliterates Trump's central defense that he genuinely believed the election was stolen. When your own daughter testifies you admitted the claims were politically useful rather than true, you can't maintain you acted in good faith. 2. The classified documents were deliberately kept. Ivanka described conversations where her father acknowledged he wasn't supposed to retain classified materials, but wanted to keep certain documents for his legacy and future political activities. She observed him directing staff to move boxes during periods that corresponded with his attorney's attempts to account for materials in response to subpoenas. That's not a mistake. That's not confusion. That's willful retention and obstruction, exactly what prosecutors needed to prove. 3. Financial fraud was knowing and deliberate. Working as executive vice president of the Trump Organization, Ivanka had direct knowledge of business practices now at issue in civil fraud cases. She testified that her father was directly aware of discrepancies between valuations used for different purposes and made deliberate decisions about how to characterize assets based on what would be most advantageous, not based on consistent methodology. This confirms prosecution theories. The false financial information wasn't good faith errors. It was knowing fraud. 4. He viewed laws as obstacles to circumvent. Perhaps most revealing, Ivanka testified about her father's general approach to legal and ethical constraints. She described him stating on multiple occasions that rules and laws were obstacles to be circumvented when they conflicted with his objectives, and that his position and resources meant he could usually avoid consequences. This establishes consciousness of wrongdoing across multiple alleged violations, a pattern of deliberate disregard for legal requirements. The courtroom reaction tells you everything. Watch the body language. Prosecutors appeared satisfied and relieved they'd obtained testimony establishing facts they'd struggled to prove through other means. Trump's legal team looked stunned and deflated, realizing their client's own daughter had undermined key elements of their defense strategy across multiple cases. Trump himself? He left immediately through a side exit without his usual media comments. His subsequent social media attacks on Ivanka have been notably vitriolic, which legal experts say may backfire by drawing more attention to testimony that's already highly credible given its source. Why defense attorneys are talking about plea deals? Here's what several former prosecutors have said publicly. If they were leading Trump's defense team right now, they'd be urgently exploring plea negotiations. Why? Because the combination of Ivanka's testimony with other evidence makes conviction at trial highly probable. Trump's attorneys face impossible choices. Attack Ivanka's credibility, suggesting his daughter was confused or coerced risks alienating jurors who won't believe she'd falsely testify against him. Reframe her testimony? The specificity of her statements about conversations where he acknowledged fraud makes reframing nearly impossible. Argue other evidence creates doubt? When the defendant's own daughter confirms prosecution theories about knowledge and intent, reasonable doubt becomes substantially harder to establish. The problem is Trump's personality and political calculations may not permit him to accept plea agreements, even when doing so might be his least bad option from a legal risk perspective. The historical context you need: family member testimony has shaped major criminal cases throughout history. Organized crime prosecutions. Relatives who participated in criminal enterprises provided evidence of knowledge and intent prosecutors couldn't obtain elsewhere. White-collar fraud cases. Family members in family businesses established defendants' awareness of fraudulent schemes and personal direction of illegal activities. Political corruption cases. Relatives confirmed allegedly improper activities were known to defendants and undertaken deliberately. In each context, the family relationship enhanced credibility when testimony damaged rather than supported defendants. If Ivanka's testimony proves as influential as early assessments suggest, it will rank among the most significant insider testimony in cases involving major political figures, comparable to John Dean during Watergate in terms of impact on public understanding and legal outcomes. What happens next? In the coming weeks and months, watch for legal motions addressing how Ivanka's testimony affects various proceedings, Trump's personal reaction and implications for family relationships already damaged by recent splits, polling data showing whether voters' assessments change based on testimony from his daughter, strategic decisions by Trump's remaining supporters about whether this testimony affects their evaluation, potential plea negotiations as defense attorneys recalibrate strategy across multiple cases, other witnesses reconsidering their positions about cooperation after seeing even Trump's daughter concluded she had a legal obligation to testify truthfully. The bigger picture: this isn't just about one man's legal troubles. It's about whether family relationships create privileges that prevent truth from emerging, or whether legal compulsion can overcome family loyalty when testimony is material to serious charges. It's about how courts and juries evaluate testimony that comes at obvious personal cost to witnesses, particularly when such testimony contradicts defendants' public narratives and establishes facts they've fought to conceal. When family members provide testimony establishing criminal knowledge and intent despite powerful reasons to protect defendants, it demonstrates that legal obligations and oath requirements can function even under the strongest conflicting loyalties. why this matters to all of us. We're not neutral observers watching courtroom drama. We're stakeholders in whether our justice system can compel truthful testimony even from those closest to defendants when such testimony is material to serious charges. The choices being made by prosecutors about how to use this testimony, by defense attorneys about how to respond, by judges about what weight to give it, and ultimately by juries about whether to credit it will shape outcomes with implications extending far beyond Trump's individual cases. The bottom line, after 94 years of watching American legal proceedings, I can tell you this. When witnesses with intimate knowledge provide testimony establishing defendants' awareness and intent despite personal costs involved, such testimony typically carries substantial weight. Courts and juries understand that the sacrifices involved suggest credibility that external witnesses lack. Ivanka's testimony appears to fall into that category of potentially decisive insider evidence testimony that establishes facts defendants cannot plausibly dispute, and that makes claims of innocence substantially more difficult to maintain. This moment represents a defendant's own daughter providing sworn testimony that directly contradicts his core defense theories and establishes facts prosecutors had struggled to prove conclusively. If this testimony proves as influential as experienced observers expect, it may mark the point at which Trump's legal defenses across multiple cases became effectively untenable. The existence of such testimony from such a source fundamentally changes the landscape by eliminating the defendant's ability to claim that evidence of knowledge and intent is speculative or circumstantial. Take action. Pay attention to how Trump's legal proceedings evolve in light of this testimony. Watch whether defense strategies adapt or whether Trump insists on approaches that ignore evidentiary realities. Observe how other witnesses respond. Note whether public perceptions shift based on testimony from a source whose credibility is difficult to dispute. Remember, insider testimony establishing criminal knowledge and intent represents the most powerful evidence prosecutors can obtain. When family members testify against defendants under oath, despite obvious reasons to protect them, courts and juries generally conclude such testimony must be truthful because the costs of providing it are so high. If this analysis helped you understand what's really happening beyond the headlines, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with others who want substantive insight into major legal developments. These questions about how legal systems compel truthful testimony and whether such testimony proves decisive will inform legal practice and public understanding for years to come. Thank you for engaging with these critical matters. The answers emerging from these cases matter to all of us.